Hello everyone, this is POL 51. This is week 7, and we are reading chapter 6 from the textbook, and as always, do the discussion board entry, the journal entry. Today, the video that I ask you to watch is the speech that Donald Trump recently gave at the United Nations. So watch that video, and I also put on a blackboard so that you can get a better context, geopolitical context. I say, watch also the speech given by Xi Jinping from the Chinese leader. And say also, I asked the question in the discussion board. So, what do you think of Trump's keeping repeating the phrase China virus that he says in that video as well? I mean, in other speeches too. Okay, and then. As always, the journal entry will be more related to the text, right? The questions are from the textbook. They are there in the journal section. And remember also that for next time, I left, the video to be added, right? Depending on the results of the elections. Okay, so we wait and see. Probably I wait before I make the video. Okay, for week 8 next class. Okay, so in any case, today the textbook is again a very interesting chapter. I believe it's on the question of public opinion, and you can think about that even beyond the scope of this class in terms of, if you will, philosophically, what is the question of public opinion. What does public mean? You can think about the difference between public and private. So private reason, public reason. There is a philosopher who speaks about this. We have our private maybe opinions. Then what is this public sphere and public opinion? But what is opinion also? Think about the meaning of we say everybody has an opinion, or actually is entitled to an opinion. Think about this platitude, this common saying, right? I mean, the question is, what is opinion and what is the truth, right? I mean, if everybody is entitled to their opinion, but no one is really entitled to the truth. The truth is what it is, right? So opinions are, generally speaking, very dangerous, in the sense that I can and very often I do have a wrong opinion, false opinion. So the question is also that there must be this process of education, proper education, in order to have the correct opinion. I don't know, in terms of science. I mean, today, for example, people speak all the time about this, very thoughtlessly about fake news, the question of science. Many people dismissing the findings in the discourse of science, I don't know, in relation to the coronavirus, for example, right? Or many other things in relation to global warming, right? And the climate crisis, the ecological crisis. I mean, many people dismiss altogether what science says, because, again, ultimately the idea is everybody can have their opinion. But this is highly problematic. Of course, I mean, there are still people who believe, for example, that the world is flat, right? I mean, and they might say, but I want to have my opinion. But the question is, there are some things that are not left to opinion, right? I mean, I think about like the exact sciences. I mean, a very simple proposition like 2 plus 2 equals 4, right? That's not my opinion. That's what it is, But if I say no, but in my mind, I have a different opinion. I think that 2 plus 2 equals 5. Can I say that? Because everybody's entitled to their opinion. Yeah, I can say it technically, right? I can pronounce the words, but it makes no sense whatsoever. So why say it, and why keep that opinion, which is obviously wrong, which is, has nothing to do with the truth. So this is very important, think about this question also of what opinion in general is. I mean, of course, we have opinions, but we should be cautious, and we should be, we should make sure that our opinion is, let's say, as close to the truth as possible, right? Because at times maybe the truth is not even possible to find about some things. But in any case, the search for the truth, that's what philosophy is about, that's what science is about, right? So in any case, it is important to think about this opinion and public opinion, we will see in a moment, the politics of, and therefore the possibility that this opinion and the public opinion can be, and very often is, entirely manipulated, right? So one has to be, especially with and then the textbook goes into the question of the media, right? And the politics of the media, and the politics of public opinion, and the social media today as well, Facebook and so on and so forth, right? I mean, again, one has to be very careful when one uses these platforms, and one has to be very critical, as always is the case. Critical thinking, right? And they mentioned critical thinking at one point. That's the basis, that's the same as philosophical thinking, okay? So the opinion must be well formed. In any case, that's the chapter outline, the nature of public opinion, how is public opinion measured, right? Again, what does the public think? We can also, problematize this. You can, think about what is this, what is it that we mean by the public, right? People. But in any case, think about that. And then the effects of public opinion. I highlight, as always, a few passages. You read those especially, but read also the whole chapter. What is public opinion? On page 200. Okay, public opinion is a collection, I'm reading, of popular views about something, perhaps a person, a local or national event, or a new idea, right? Collection of, so these individual opinions are collected together, which is already a problem in itself, right? I mean, you collect different, opinions, but then there is a result which is different from the opinion that every, if you will, individual might have, right? And then together they are analyzed and interpreted for politicians and media. Okay, so then there is the question of propaganda. I can't read everything, but where do opinions come from? People's opinions. That's a very interesting question, very philosophical question, right? We all have opinions, but again, we have to make sure that we don't simply say whatever we see, whatever we feel, because at times we are completely mistaken, right? I mean, that's a very important question in philosophy. But if I believe that the sun rises only because I see that every morning, right, then I would be mistaken. I mean, if that's my opinion is not really valid, right? So I should actually make my opinion conform with some kind of a truth, okay? So in any case, think about this. Where do these opinions come from? Most citizens, but this is interesting, base their political political opinions on their beliefs and their attitudes. Beliefs and attitudes. These are two other problematic, difficult ideas. What is a belief? What is it that I believe? And why do I believe whatever I believe? What is the attitude? What is it that constitute, right? That makes, what is it that makes my attitude the way it is? Okay, beliefs, they continues. I mean, both, the textbook says both of which, right, beliefs and attitudes, right, begin to form right, in childhood. Okay, so think about this. This is very important. Then there is the question of socialization. The next section is on political socialization. I had to go kind of fast. How does that happen? They say the family, the school, education in general, and then the various ways in which people interact with one another. You know, the workplace, the church, right, religion, or whatever other, the religious dimension of life, or whatever, political parties, organizations, and then also the the many venues of daily life. So interacting with one another, this is also okay. There is always an impact, that we always have an influence on others have an influence on us, and so on. Okay, so in any case, read this question about beliefs and attitudes, very interesting, and problematize that. Okay, I mean, think about that in a problematic and critical way. Okay, so political socialization, still page 200, is the process by which we are trained to understand, enjoy, and join a country's political world, and so on and so forth. So it is this socialization, which is also another word that we can use is normalization. We get normalized in a certain way. So, and then there is the question of ideology that you find on page 201, and even later. The question of ideology is very important. And then a section called socialization agents. I already anticipated some of that. You know, the textbook says the most on page 203, the most prominent agents of socialization are family and school, right? And that makes sense, right? And then it says for many children, family is the first introduction to politics. And then the question of behavior, future behavior, how does that impacts future behavior. Okay, so then the question of high school, think critically. The question of thinking critically, you find that that's the top line, the first line of page 205. And I want you to think a little about this idea of the necessity that we have, the importance of thinking the proper way, adequate way, which is to think critically. What is it to think critically? Is to think, right, with a question mark. Not to take things for granted only because we see it on Facebook. That doesn't mean that it is true, whatever we see, or on TV, or because people tell us. And it might be, a person of authority, or the expert, and so on and so forth. But it is always important to, approach everything with a critical mind, which is to be open minded as well, right? So in any case, think about this. And there is here also they mention the question of religion, religious ceremonies. Whatever type of religion people have, but it is always there is always a degree of socialization there, right? People socialize, and a degree of normalization, right? Depending on the religion, then you are normalized one way or the other. So then again, another important moment of agent of socialization is, like I said, interpersonal relations at the level of daily life, friends and peers on page 205. Think about when people speak, especially for, I don't know, teenagers, peer, peer pressure, right? When people do things because of, right, that situation. But in any case, it is broader than that. It is, the question of networks, communication networks, social media, and they mention Facebook. It's not a positive or negative thing, right? I mean, it's not that the question is to be cautious, to be critical, right? I mean, I'm not saying, and that the textbook is not saying something negative about social networking and the use that we make, that we may make of Facebook, Instagram, and so on and so forth. I myself have, right? Use Facebook, Instagram, and so on. Okay, so media, television, radio, newspaper, the internet. Okay, we saw all this, but in any case, these are important things. But the question in the way in which they, have an impact on not only the opinion that the private individual might have, but public opinion. That's the point, and how this then can have a great impact on the political life of the country and the world. Really, that's why I asked you also to say in when you watch the video, the speech that Trump gave at the UN. Think about what is this repeating the phrase China virus, right? I mean, that's very because that is a way in which things are, at least the attempts at manipulating things or pushing them in one direction rather than another. In any case, the example that you have here is examples from recent demonstrations over the deaths of many young African American men at the hand of the police, right? And then the demonstrations, some violent, but violent why? Also, one may ask, what this violence, where the violence starts from. But in any case, you find that on page 205 and then 206. Okay, then socialization and ideology. The question of ideology is very important. We spoke about ideology. I want to start wrapping this up, but we spoke about ideologies a few weeks ago. You have here on page, starting on page 207, a list of and an explanation of the most basic dominant ideologies all throughout history: modern contemporary history, fascism, traditional conservatism, modern conservatism. Read that on page 208. Then liberalism, classical and modern, socialism, and communism. Right? So read this. Again, we spoke about this already, and you wrote about this as well, but it's an interesting section, interesting chapter. Then the section on how is public opinion measured. Okay, I'm not going to go into that, but read some sections from that as well. The polling type of modality, whereby then predictions are made. Even at the level, say, of the presidential elections, but very often then these predictions are right, they prove to be wrong. So in any case, then on page 217, what does the public think? That's very interesting. And you have these two ways in which people can arrive at an opinion by a heuristic. You find the word on page 217, modality, approach, right? Which is to say, I mean, you do it, like it says, is shortcut or rules of thumb, right? Or for decision making, or by doing the more appropriate, more adequate research about something, right? So, I mean, there are this one is more intuitive, maybe whatever, you get to the opinion you have by experience that, and the other is perhaps more grounded. So the second method, page 218, is to do research, learning background information before making a decision. Okay, so then that's very interesting. Okay, so then the question of political culture is also interesting on page 219. But I want to start wrapping up. Again, this is just, a few pointers that I gave you, a few highlights. Then you read the chapter and do the discussion board entry and the journal entry. Okay, so the question, there are, issues about which, public opinion becomes important, and there are different views. And so, say, one issue which is mentioned here on page 223 is that of abortion, right? which has always been important, today is also at the center of a political right debate and so on, or the question of same-sex marriage and so on and so forth. You can add more: the death penalty, euthanasia, public safety, that you find on page 224, and so on, and so on, right, and so forth. Okay, so then public opinion and political institutions on page 224. That's interesting too. And then the effects of public opinion on the elections, for example, and the relationship between public opinion and government on page 231. So in any case, think about that. This is one of the questions also, whether presidents, for example, should follow public opinion or not. But in any case, the key terms, I highlight some of them as I always do. So go to page 236 to 37, and you see these important, right, key terms, and then the questions. Okay, the questions are the questions that I transfer to Blackboard are questions 22 about the question of socialization, normalization by the media especially, and 24 whether what are the situations in which maybe political leaders should not follow, that's the way they frame the question, public opinion, and why. And think about this, but think about this also in terms of the important issues that we are um, living through. I mean, not only at the level of government, but the level of daily life, the governed, which is the people, and so on and so forth. Okay, so in any case, I hope I gave you a sense of this important chapter, and interesting in many ways. Do your writing assignments. Next time we'll continue. We do chapter 7 and chapter 8, and we will probably next time or the time after that, because I don't know when when I do the video, speak about the results of the elections. Okay, all right, thank you, bye.